walk into this room at your own risk, because it leads to the future. Not a future that will be, but one that might be. It has refinements, technological advances, and a more sophisticated approach to the destruction of human freedom. But like every one of the super-states that preceded it, it has one iron rule. Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace.
Thank you. Do they know what the Gadsden flag is? That it's a historical flag?
So the reason that they do not want the flag, the reason we do not want the flag displayed is due to its origins with slavery and slave trade. That is what was, that's the reasoning behind them, you know.
The Gadsden flag.
The Don't Tread on Me.
Okay. Which is the Gadsden flag. Okay, so what's going to happen if he doesn't take it off?
He is able to go. I was actually just telling him, like, because he's so much school. So I asked him, can you just take his stuff out of his bag and go back to class? Like, I just want him to go back to class. The bag can't go back. And stuff back on it, because we can't have that being around other kids.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with slavery. That's like the revolutionary war passion. Slavery and fighting liberation, but that's the revolutionary war.
District policy is wrong, right? So you just following orders, okay? You just following orders. Again, this is crazy. You know this is wrong. You're ignorant. You don't know anything, okay? But hey, I'm just following orders. I think the flag's racist. The district apparently thinks the flag. You see, this is why I say parents gotta get more involved in their school boards, right? Because this only happens when you have wokes running the school boards, right? That's what's happening. Okay, you need to vote these woke revolutionaries out and put conservative parents on these school boards or conservatives on the school boards, because this is nonsense. This shouldn't even be tolerated. Again, this is an attack on free speech.
So the last thing I want is him out of class.
Yeah, I know. He takes his classes seriously. Yes. He studies. He wants to get straight A's. He did that. He made honor roll when he was here before. Yep. He intends to do that again right now, but it's hard because he keeps missing class for this. So
I understand that.
Yeah, and I mean, we teach him to always stick up for your beliefs. And I mean, you're going over the revolution for 7th grade. I mean, the founding fathers stood up for what they believed in against unjust laws. This is unjust.
Okay, like I said, we are upholding a policy that was provided to us, which we have to uphold.
Okay, can you show me where?
Which has set a trial date for former President Donald Trump on charges he tried to overturn the 2020 election. March 24th, 2024, one day before Super Tuesday. That's later than the date proposed by Special Counsel Jack Smith, but far sooner than the 2026 date attorneys for Mr. Trump proposed. Right now.
Good morning. It's good news, bad news. Actually, in the annual mid-year survey by major law enforcement agencies from across the country, the good, homicides are down. It's great news, actually. The bad, of course, though, is overall, violent crime is rising. So the findings are part of a survey conducted by the Major Cities Chiefs Association. It's made up from 70 agencies, including the LAFD. The numbers show homicides fell more than 2% from January 1st to June 30th of this year compared to the same time last year. Rapes were also down 5% over that same time period. But overall crime was up by more than 4%, with robberies skyrocketing by nearly 12%. Now, that's the national picture, but of course you're asking, what about the city of Angeles? Well, according to this survey, there were 186 homicides in the first part of the year, and that's compared to 184 during the same time last year. And if you look there at robberies, during the first part of 2021, there were more than 3,800 robberies. During the first part of this year, there were more than 700 reported. Of course, this is also more than just a crime story, it's a political one. According to a recent Pew Research survey, about 60% of voters say violent crime was a very important issue to them in the upcoming midterm elections.
Well, let me just be clear. I got into Harvard only because of affirmative action. I went to a school no one had ever heard of in Denver, Colorado, in a small suburb. I didn't go to Exeter or Andover. I didn't have college test prep. I just happened to be really nerdy and smart and have really good grades and good SAT scores. But someone came to Denver, Colorado to look for me. A Harvard recruiter flew to Denver, and I met up with her at the Village Inn restaurant and did a pre-interview to pull me into Harvard. I was pulled in. And the schools like Harvard and Yale that I got into affirmatively. Yes. And it was literally not saying we're going to take an unqualified person and put them in Harvard. Yes. We're going to take a very qualified person who we would never know existed and put them in Harvard. That's how I got there. That's how Ketanji got there. That's how Justice Jackson, I should say. Justice Jackson got there. It's how Clarence Thomas got there.
Live from the 19th District Police Station with the latest. Judy, good morning.
Good morning. Hours into the holiday weekend, Chicago police are investigating the shootings of at least 13 people. That is since Friday evening. 3 of those people were killed. One of them happened here in the Lakeview neighborhood. The victim was a 34-year-old man. He was found on the sidewalk at about 2:15 a.m. near Surf Street and Broadway. Police say the man had been shot in the chest. Paramedics took him to Illinois Masonic Medical Center where he was pronounced dead. A bag resembling a messenger bag was left behind at the scene. Less than an hour earlier, a 33-year-old man was shot, critically injured in Westtown. Police say he was standing at the corner of Sangamon and Randolph. Someone started shooting from a car, hitting the victim in the chest. And a 17-year-old boy was shot when he opened the front door of his home in Deering. It happened at 97th and South Merrill at about 10:30 last night. Police said the teen opened the door, he heard shots, and then realized that he had been hit. He was treated at the University of Chicago Hospital for a gunshot wound to his thigh. Now, police are looking for suspects in all 3 of these overnight shootings. A 16-year-old was also among the overnight victims. Outside the 19th District Station on the north side, Judy Wang, WGN News.
I feel like anything could really happen. You can't just say yourself, like, this can't happen to me, this won't happen to me. It could. Anything could happen to you, especially by yourself.
I don't take the subway past really like 8 o'clock, which means I then need to Uber or cab, which can be expensive.
We just don't understand why somebody can't get control of the crime. Somebody needs to crack down.
I always say if you ask someone from Brooklyn how you're doing, if they say we're doing great, it means they just moved into the neighborhood or they're visiting the United States. People are angry. Lack of economic opportunity, home ownership. My thing is, without home ownership, you have no equity, so they're moving.
And it is an expensive area, but you've dealt with that in the past. Now you have all these various types coming in, and that's scaring some potential shoppers off, right?
Yeah.
Hawaii's electric utility has acknowledged that its power lines started a wildfire on Maui, but it blames firefighters for the deadly disaster that followed. Hawaiian Electric says county firefighters declared the initial fire scene contained, and they left. They say the fire appeared to reignite nearby later that day. The statements come in response to a lawsuit that was filed by Maui County. They blame Hawaiian Electric for failing to shut off power despite exceptionally high winds and dry conditions. The electric company denies those allegations.
Rose, what'd you think last night?
Okay, what did I think? I watched the debate, and the only one I came back with thinking of Bergen I thought he did a good
Governor of North Dakota.
Yes, right. But you know something? There's only one man that Russia, China, and Iran are afraid of.
And that is?
Donald Trump. He did more. I'm in my 80s, and let me tell you, I have watched presidents since FDR. And I want to tell you, Trump is the first one that said what he was going to do, and he did it. I have never seen anybody do it before. And I know a lot of young people want somebody new. Do you think China would be afraid of somebody new?
Rose is going to be in the 5 the rest of the week, so make some room, Greg.
Let me be very clear here tonight. This is a big deal. Number one, all of us, all of you have been lied to by Joe Biden and the Biden administration and their inability to safeguard this country's most sensitive secrets. This is a clear and present danger, a major threat to our national security. By the way, a major threat for our allies' national security. By the way, it gives Vladimir Putin, I know the Biden family syndicate loves to do business with Russia and Putin. It gives them critical intelligence that they would not have otherwise had. And worst of all, it exposed that Joe Biden authorized putting U.S. Special Forces on the ground in Ukraine and lied to we, the American people. We should have known about some of this. They should have at least gone through Congress, and this needs to be gotten to the bottom of.
A legal analyst at CNN is slamming the Department of Justice for slow-walking the Hunter Biden investigation. You've got to watch this. Roll tape.
This is preposterous. This has been pending, according to our women CNN, since 2018. 5 years. And this, by the way, this investigation is not the laptop. This investigation is a tax issue. Did Hunter Biden declare his income? And a sort of obscure gun law. Did he possess a gun while he was addicted to drugs, which you're not allowed to do under federal law? Did he lie about that? This spans the Trump administration and the Biden administration. Someone's got to make a call in this case. I don't know what is going on, but it's beyond anything I've seen before.
Is President Biden woke?
So let me tell you what the president cares about and what's important to this president. The president doesn't concern himself about what Republicans are trying to do in creating political stunts, in making an issue out of the things that they feel benefits them politically, not the American people, not what matters to the American people, but what benefits them politically for their own ability to move forward.
to a Democrat who is the head of a proclaimed sanctuary city, blasting his own party over the border crisis. New York City Mayor Eric Adams under a lot of pressure lately to deal with the nearly 10,000 migrants who have been bussed in from the southern border. Adams' initial solution was to build a tent city in AOC's district in the Bronx to house them. I shouldn't talk that too much. Ocasio-Cortez voiced her concern that it was in a flood zone. Adams caved to her demands and now is being moved a few miles away to Randolph Island. The mayor now calling out both sides over this crisis.
The far right is doing the wrong thing and the far left is doing nothing. I mean, everyone needs to be in this game. Everyone should be on, all hands on deck. Everyone. Not sitting back and throwing rocks. A rock is not a plan. Everyone should be on deck helping this crisis right now.
Cases have been going down every day, and based on my reservation system, I see 50% less reservation than last week. And I'm hoping that's going to stop and it's going to start getting better.
But so far, things have not gotten better. That restaurant owner directly across the street from where we stand now. When you look at this line, we're seeing some of the same faces that we saw yesterday. Speaking to these migrants, they say some have been here 4 nights waiting to get inside. We spoke to one man from Venezuela, Saul, who had already spent 2 nights outside. He says he hasn't gotten any answers and doesn't know when he will get off the streets.
They don't help in single men or single women. For that reason, we still hear them. Also, we don't know what we can do.
So as of last spring, 90,000 migrants have come through New York. We're currently housing 56,000. And this is the backup when it comes to processing new migrants coming through the city.
How many people live here? 8 million people? We have one of the biggest budgets for a city in the country. And we've got 61,000 immigrants, illegals here. And Mayor Eric Adams, and you can't wait for him to rise to the occasion, is moaning about the fact that he can't afford it. If you can't afford it, Mayor Adams, what about the 5 million who've come through in the last year and have destroyed the southern border and the ranches? And how dare you even consider putting these people that are unvetted, we don't know who they are, we don't know what their real names are, they're not even given an alien registration number, they're just being released en masse into the public, and you want them near our kids? Are you kidding me? How far is the gym from the school? And I'll tell you what, it's about time New York City and the liberal Democrats experience what the rest of the country has been experiencing.
Rising Republican star Vivek Ramaswamy was the talk of the town after Wednesday's GOP primary debate. Here's what Ramaswamy had to say about his night on stage.
You've come into this, you've written a couple of books where you've laid out some of your philosophy, so you're not a complete newcomer to public debate, far from it. You've been writing op-eds for years for newspapers, etc. But in political terms,
yes,
you were, in fact, you were called a rookie.
Yes.
By former Vice President Mike Pence last night. How did you enjoy the big stage?
I enjoyed it tremendously. 2 hours went right by. I thought we were just getting warmed up. And, frankly, I took it as a badge of honor that I was actually the subject of most of the arrows that came from both sides of the stage. And it was actually a good opportunity to smoke out some real ideological differences, actually, within the Republican Party. I think they're deep. And I think that I'm going to have to be the person in this race and on the debate stage who smokes that out. Should we fight foreign wars that do not directly advance American interests or not? Should we actually unapologetically advance American interests even when it comes to domestic economic policy in the face of a climate change agenda that I think is fundamentally anti-American at its core? There were real disagreements on that stage last night, and I think that's what animated much of the debate, which I think is a good thing.
Ramaswamy tweeted yesterday, "I was the only non-neocon on the stage last night. There really was no difference on foreign policy between Joe Biden, Liz Cheney, or anyone else on the stage. If you want 20 more years of endless wars that don't advance our interests, then I'm not your guy. But if you want to stay out of no-win wars and make America stronger at home, I know how to get that done."
Rising host Ravi Suave tweeted, Vivek Ramaswamy and Ron DeSantis were the only 2 candidates who said they would end U.S. military funding to Ukraine. Their position is in line with 71% of GOP voters, according to an SSN RSS poll. Most other Republican candidates are pushing a foreign policy, the overseas is just something that won't go over well. And I think that is going to boost DeSantis and Ramaswamy in the polls a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, look, I'm looking at Senate.gov, and it states the U.S. has given Ukraine more than $113 billion in aid. And I go back to that CNN poll that I referenced. I mean, Robbie is right in terms of Republican voters, but it's not just Republican voters who've had enough of this. Again, 55% of Americans say they do not want Congress to authorize additional funding to support Ukraine. And I understand that. I mean, you look at inflation, and Americans are having a very difficult time to pay for basic necessities. Gas prices have increased. We know how expensive it is to pay for rent, let alone get a home if you're lucky enough to even get a mortgage. And so Americans are dealing with those everyday realities and looking at how much money we're sending to a foreign country. And they're saying, well, wait a minute, what about what I'm experiencing? What about what I'm going through? Shouldn't Congress focus on us?
I think that's exactly right. When I think about how over 60% of the country said they were living paycheck to paycheck, when I think about how median rent in the United States is now $2,038, meaning that if you're earning median income in the United States, you're spending over 30% of your income on rent and you're rent burdened, people are struggling to pay for groceries. When you have 44% of the country considered a low-wage worker earning $10.66 per hour, it's going to be a tough sell to say that we need to give military aid to this other country. When people don't know how they're meeting their most basic needs at home, it doesn't even matter if the situation is dire, it doesn't matter if it's a just and moral war, none of that matters if the people at home are struggling to survive. If you can't make ends meet, it's hard to be empathetic for anyone anywhere else that is struggling, and that's where so many Americans are at. And I think DC, not understanding that reality, having so many consultants, interns, and people in the bureaucracy who make decisions, people who go on and work on political campaigns and work on that messaging, these are people that are fundamentally disconnected from what life is like for everyday working people. It's not a miscalculation when it comes to strategy. It seems as though it's never a thought in the political class's mind what life is like for everyday Americans. And that's why when candidates like Vivek Ramaswamy or Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump tap in just the tiniest bit to what that mindset is like, it sets them apart so much. They don't even have policy platforms that will address those problems, but they're speaking to the frustration, and when that's enough for someone to earn your vote, it's a really sad state of affairs for our democracy and when we think about the political field for 2024.
I mean, look, I think it's why Trump has had so much resonance with blue-collar workers. I also think it's why Ramaswamy has had a significant amount of resonance. I mean, I'm looking here at a poll that came out on Fortune.com a couple months ago that showcases 57%, Jess, of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. 4 in 10 can't afford a $400 emergency. I just really want people to put that in perspective. And so when you see our Congress authorizing and approving over $100 billion to a foreign country where most Americans do not understand the nuances of this conflict, they're thinking to themselves, well, if I have an emergency at home, who's going to look out for me? Where's the assistive programs for me? Yet we have a significant amount of money we can send overseas when we're continuously hearing the debt is rising. We don't have enough money to afford for these basic necessities, yet hundreds of billions to Ukraine. I get an emergency of $400 or $1,000. I don't know what to do. Many people look at that reality and say enough is enough. Take care of people at home. And it's why, again, Trump, Ramaswamy, and even to some respect, Ron DeSantis is doing well, because I think a lot of Americans are tired of living paycheck to paycheck. They're tired of struggling. They look at the wage gap between the wealthy and the poor. People are told work 40 hours a week, go to school, get a college degree, and you'll be able to get a home. You can put your kids through college. That isn't the reality anymore for the majority of Americans. And I think people are looking to their leaders for help, and yet the leaders are focused on another country, yet not the individuals struggling right here at home.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't hear a lot of solutions from the debaters, including Vivek and Ron. We didn't hear a solution about how are we going to make working people flourish in this country. We had the promise from Mike Pence of we're going to do a continuation of the Trump-Pence tax cuts. which actually cost the country a ton of revenue and cut taxes for the ultra-wealthy in the United States. It's popular opinion among most Americans that we should have taxes on people earning over $400,000. There are so many people who are making so much money off of the backs of working people in the United States. CEO pay in 1965 was 20 times the average worker at a company. Today, that figure is at about 398 times the average worker at a company. When you think about how much money the ultra-wealthy are making off of the work of most Americans, you really understand why wages have been stagnant since 1970, despite workers being more productive than ever. And so we need a candidate, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, speaking to that being the source of working people struggling. And until they do that, and until they come up with a platform of policy solutions, in my opinion, they haven't earned the vote of working class people.
I'll just say real quick, remember, Nikki Haley got a standing ovation when she blamed Republicans for the Trump tax cuts. More Rising right after this.
Chicago's migrant crisis is still growing this morning, and there's not a lot of solutions. Joni Lum explains where migrants are being put up and how many more have arrived in the last day.
Chicago received 2 more busloads of asylum seekers just yesterday, and they're designating new places for temporary shelters. But 1,800 people are staying in police districts right now, and so seeing unhoused people around the city is much more common. Families with small children have been sleeping and spending their hours in police district lobbies as they await more suitable housing. Chicago has received 13,500 new arrivals, 108 buses. 6,565 are in shelters, 1,800 await placement. Some are living at the American Islamic College on the north side, where neighbors are tolerant.
I thought it was like a daycare or something. I noticed that there was like families around, but I mean, it's all been kept pretty contained, so.
If I were in their shoes, I would want something like that for my situation, so it's nice that we're able to provide something for people in need.
Now there's word that Chicago Lakeshore Hotel in Kenwood Hyde Park could be the next temporary shelter. Community members just finding out about it. There will be an emergency meeting in Hyde Park tomorrow evening. Joni Lum, Fox 32, Chicago.
Joe Biden's giving this place $44 million. Woo! Woo! $44 million. Yay!
Thank you so much, Joe.
We did it, Joe. $44 million is a lot of money. What do you guys need?
Cheaper food, cheaper gas.
For them to clean up the drugs off the street.
Youth programs out here for the kids. I really like the pool hall.
Help with the police so that we can get it more safe out here. So you don't want to defund the police? Not really, we need them. Sorry. He's spending it all on an electric bus charging station. You serious? And what that supposed to do? Go figure.
Oh, no, that sucks.
Joe Biden, and I love whoever did the video, the comparison video of Donald Trump walking into the UFC as if he was a fighter, and Biden stumbling around on a beach. They kind of nailed the comparison here, but just like when Democrats were willing to vote for a vegetable in John Fetterman, it won't matter, does it?
I don't know. I mean, it's amazing these two men are 3 years apart in age. Like, how can that be? He looks strong as a horse. It looks like there's no stopping the guy. And Joe Biden looks like he's been run over by a horse. So it's very alarming. And Biden's going only one direction. They know what they have with Biden. Someone they can control, someone who's just going to be told what to do. They are just banking on him not dying because nobody wants Kamala Harris. Nobody. They know she'll lose.
So here you have the president's son who's talking to his dad about his business deal with China, admitting the guy he is dealing with is the Chinese government's spy chief. It's almost unbelievable. Joe Biden has sort of been asked about this. His response, I didn't know anything. Watch.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period.
Huh. You lied, and now you've been caught lying.
For centuries, philosophers have wrestled with the question, is man able to decide his destiny through his own actions? Or does fate have the final say?
We now return control of your television set to you. Until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the Outer Limits.